could start.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So good evening to all, and good morning to those joining us from US or other places. I'm really delighted to welcome you all to the report launch and panel discussion on electric vehicles and utility scale storage integration. This is being organized as a lead up to strategic energy partner, US-India Strategic Energy Partnership Ministerial meeting. And we hope we are planning to release 2 reports in today's event. And without further ado, let me just give you quick introduction of Michael, our first speaker, and invite him to begin the event. So Michael is a senior US Foreign Service officer with over 30 years of experience from around the world. Of this, the last 10 years have been in Asia, particularly in India, Bangladesh, and Thailand. Michael has a deep understanding of the Indian energy sector and has been engaged in the US-India Strategic Energy Partnership. So Michael, I'll invite you to please give the welcome remarks. Over to you, Michael.
Monali, thank you very, very much, and welcome to everybody who has taken the time to join us this evening. We're very grateful for your participation, and we also believe it's a poignant moment in the work that we've been doing, and we believe it's a poignant moment in how it will impact the work that all of us collectively are interested in. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very good morning to those of you who may be joining us from the US or other parts of the world. So on behalf of the US Agency for International Development, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's report launch event and panel discussion on electric vehicles and utility scale storage integration in the distribution network for the power sector. You know, let me say that it is paramount that we look at these issues very, very closely and that we find a way forward. And I know the work that we've been doing here at USAID with a host of partners, not the least of which is the government of India, has been really, really profoundly moving for me personally and professionally. So it's with a great deal of pleasure that I welcome Joint Secretary Ghanshyam Prasad from the Ministry of Power and Mr. Amal Sinha, the CEO of BSES Rajdhani Power Ltd, or BRPL as we like to call them, and our distinguished panel members from India and the US. It's an exciting moment. It is also, as I mentioned, a very poignant time in our collective history. I can't go any further really without recognizing that we're living in an unprecedented moment, of course. We're joining you virtually today rather than meeting in some big hotel room where we'd be sitting under bright lights in an air-conditioned room, sipping coffee and tea together and having a chance to get to know one another. And while that is really disappointing, what's really exciting is to know that through the integration and the modernization of our power sector, things like virtual meetings are possible. What we do going forward in the future will prepare us to be better at what we do, and will also build resilience so that we're able to respond to these kinds of traumatic shocks in our world, whether they're public health, economic, or social or political. We're getting better at it every day. Today's event has been organized on the sidelines of what I'm sure you've heard about, the US-India Strategic Energy Partnership, or as we often refer to it as SEP, as a lead up to the ministerial meetings on July 17th. This is a profound moment in the US-India relationship, as well as a profound moment, as I mentioned, in the development of new, renewable, affordable, clean energies and the associated technologies like e-vehicles, like battery storage that go along with that issue. We're celebrating our partnership with the Ministry of Power and the Government of India by releasing 2 reports today prepared under a joint initiative that we call Greening the Grid, or G2G. The program aims to support the Government of India in the integration of large-scale renewable energy into the Indian power grid. Not an easy feat, as I've come to learn over these last 4 years that I've been privileged to spend in India. The integration of renewable energy is not something that we all just decide and say, yeah, let's do it. And in the morning we wake up and it's done. The amount of work, the collective critical thinking, the testing, the pilot programs, the ability to really think through the long-term issues that are about markets, that are about infrastructure, that are about technical capacity, that are about management, the regulatory and policy situation is really unprecedented in the world. Globally, the energy sector is transitioning to its low carbon resources, enabled through smart technologies, IT infrastructure, supportive policy and regulatory frameworks, Similarly, India too is on track to transition its energy sector to address the challenges of climate change as well as air pollution. We are, in fact, the stewards of the future of our environmental life. Those of us who will bring kids into this world and raise them to become parts of this universe must take on that responsibility. The target of 450 gigabytes of renewable energy and 100% electric vehicles by 2030 here in India clearly demonstrates the leadership of the Indian government. Over the next few years, emerging technologies such as solar photovoltaics, battery energy storage systems, and electric vehicles are expected to play an important role in this transition. I have to say, it's been incredibly exciting to be a part of this in India and to watch the government of India take on with such fervor and with such passion, recognizing that this is good for their economy, it's good for their population, and it's good for their environment. In other words, it's good for their future in almost every sense. Not doing such would not just be negligent, it would actually be verge on criminal. And the Indian government recognizes that, and they have jumped in both feet first. However, I have to say, these emerging technologies could also pose a challenge for distribution companies, the utilities that move that energy out to users, whether it's residential or industrial, who play a critical role in providing the last mile connectivity. It's also essential that the utilities evolve with the changing times. For example, the utilities need to equip themselves to deal with the increasing load due to electric vehicles, and at the same time, help build the charging infrastructure to facilitate the electric vehicle growth. Energy storage could prove to be a technology that could support utilities in meeting challenges of demand growth. However, its high capital costs and limited ground level experiences make the decision for investing in this technology challenging, to say the least, for both utilities and regulators. The study by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, analyzes the impact of EVs on the distribution grid and assesses the benefits from installing battery energy storage systems, BESS as we call them. The study, undertaken jointly with the BRPL team over a period of 1 year, hopefully will provide answers to some very relevant questions. I have to say, from my own personal experience watching this happen, I've noted that the folks here in India, the government, our friends who are at BRPL in the Ministry of Power, have been critical at every stage to ask the right questions to make sure the systems are proper, that the underlying assumptions are on the mark. And so this second report being released today is a white paper, which highlights the key considerations to be taken into account for setting up the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This is based on an extensive review of international case studies on how utilities and regulators around the world tackled these challenges. While India is not the first one to look at these in depth, it is certainly one of the largest ones. And what happens here in India will have profound impact on how it unfolds on the rest of the planet. I'm sure the analysis and the tools, excuse me, such as the prioritization framework for charging infrastructure as suggested in the white report, would prove to be an important tool for Indian utilities, eventually having an impact far and wide on the Indian population, Indian industry, Indian households. I want to thank and acknowledge Joint Secretary Prasad, who has always been very supportive of USAID's efforts. He's been a colleague, he's been a champion. Mr. Prasad, thank you for your time and your support to our joint efforts in the power sector. We're proud to partner with the government of India on its journey to a high-performing, low-emission, energy-secure future economy in India, and what we believe will catalyze the same for the world. I'd also like to thank Mr. Amal Sinha, the CEO from BRPL, and his team, including Mr. Rajan, for their guidance, support, and active participation in these studies. Finally, I want to congratulate the team from NREL. Our colleagues at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory have worked hard to develop a first-class, world-class report jointly with BRPL's team. And I also want to thank the Deloitte team, our implementing partner for our Greening the Grid, or the GTG-RISE program, for their excellent work on the white paper and for organizing today's event. Thank you for joining us today. I would be remiss if I didn't stop for one brief second and just share with you the fact that in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'll be getting on a plane and leaving India for what I hope is not the last time, but certainly will be the final time in my 4-year stay here. It's a sad moment for me personally. But professionally, it's an exciting moment because I know I'm handing over the reins to a team in the government of India and here in USAID and other American organizations like NREL to carry on this important work. This work will stick with me forever wherever I go. And I know how important it is, again, not just for India, but for the world. One of the great champions who has worked on this tirelessly and relentlessly over these last 4 years and many, many more since before I arrived is my colleague, Monali. Monali Hasra has really been a workhorse and a champion. She is a technical expert in this field, and she has been the one fighting for this change in India. I know she'll go on to continue to lead this work and this fight in India, and I have greatest respect for her. I want to thank her profoundly for all the avenues of focus that she has made us take a close look at and really understood what it means to be successful. We're successful today in large part because of her work and because of her dedication. So I encourage you all to take advantage of the vast expertise available here today in this webinar. I hope you will enjoy the discussions, and I'm sure that we will continue to work together on this front no matter where we are. Thank you, and have a very, very good webinar.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for your very encouraging words and also highlighting the 2 reports which we are going to release. We, needless to say, we will be missing you in our journey as India, moves forward. So thank you so much. Before I request the next speaker, I would just a housekeeping issue. I would request everyone to switch off their cameras and keep their audios muted. Just from the bandwidth perspective, and please do put on your videos whenever you speak so that we are able to capture some good photographs of the webinar. So thanks again, Michael. I would now like to introduce and invite Mr. Sinha, the CEO of BRPL. Mr. Sinha is the CEO of BSES Rajdhani Power Ltd. He has a wealth of experience under his belt. His deep understanding transcends manufacturing and service sector with expertise in areas like corporate finance, strategy planning, and so on. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Sinha, and your team for the collaboration and the support on both these reports, which would not have been possible. So thank you once again. I would now like to request you to please give your opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monali, for this, and I wish to welcome the Honorable Mr. Michael Satin, Honorable Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Subhranshu and the entire Deloitte team, and also the team from NREL and other participants who are in this forum. We are really glad that the participation is quite good, and this will give us more encouragement to do better as we go forward. This is a quite innovative project which was undertaken by BRPL in collaboration with Deloitte and NREL with a very good support and guidance coming from the Ministry of Power. As you know, BRPL is the largest power distribution in the National Capital Region of Delhi, and we are serving an area of about 750 square kilometer with a consumer base of about 2.6 million metered connections. We are operating at a fairly good amount of business efficiency, where our losses are at bare minimum of 7%, which is quite good as compared with what is the national average in India. We have been taking a lot of initiatives in improving our network, and now we are aggressively looking into areas how we can adopt ourselves and be a progressive utility while meeting the challenges of the renewable and integration thereof in our system. In that perspective, this study has been carried out. BRPL is continuously following a policy of greening its portfolio and has signed up long-term power supply agreements for over 1,200 megawatt green projects, which include solar, wind, and waste to energy. It is expected to be about 29% of our portfolio by capacity in the next 2 years. BRPL is actually actively promoting solar rooftop projects we have about 67 megawatt net metered connections by May 2020, while total capacity of Delhi is about 160 megawatt net metered connections. EV charging and adoption of EV is another focus area. BRPL is committed to convert its own fleet to EV platform over a period of the next 5 to 6 years. And we are a member of the voluntary EV 100 platform of the climate group. With the increase in the variable renewable energy, a need is felt for following a planned approach to integrate such variable RE portfolio into the grid, both at the high voltage level and as well as at the LT level. The study which we are talking in this context has come at an appropriate time when BRPL is pursuing network upgradation and optimization while integrating the RE resources. This study shall help optimizing and the wired network schemes with non-wired alternatives like battery energy storage system. This over a year-long study was done by NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and has been supported by United States Agency for International Development, USAID, as part of the Greening the Grid Renewable Integration and Sustainable Energy Initiative in collaboration with BSES Rajdhani Power Ltd. The study has resulted in the development of analytical framework which measures the impact and integration of distributed energy resources, solar PV installations, BESS, and EVs on distribution network. The framework analyzes the technical impact of above technologies on the network in terms of parameters, including network voltage and load thresholds. NREL has developed scalable end-to-end framework for evaluating the impacts of BESS, PV, and EV on power distribution systems. Different use of cases and value staking of the BESS have been evaluated, and deployment of EV technologies at different penetration levels for public and private charging studies in terms of their aggregated demand profiles has been done. The study has focused on development of reusable framework for distribution utilities, assessing impact of BESS, electric vehicles, and PV on distribution network. The study also evaluates the impact of BESS on distribution technical losses, as well as different battery deployment scenarios. I am confident that the study shall help distribution utilities, not only in BRPL, but across India, in developing technical and commercial proposals for network optimization while integrating BESS, EV, and PV based on sound and analytical framework, which would be subjected to regulatory prudence check before being allowed in the rate base. I once again thank the team from NREL who has taken a lot of efforts and in looking into evaluating this project along with the Deloitte team. And I also wish to thank USAID and the Ministry of Power, who has given support to BSES Rajdhani Power Ltd in this initiative. Thank you very much, Manali, and all the team members who are present here and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha. Really appreciate your thoughts on two reports as well as the extensive work which BRPL is doing in this field. Thank you so much. Now, we would like to move on to our keynote speaker for today, Mr. Shyam Prasad. Mr. Prasad is the Joint Secretary at Ministry of Power. He's a well-known personality in the energy sector, having worked at various portfolios within Ministry of Power as well as in other agencies, including CEA. Mr. Prasad has a wealth of experience in power system operations, long-term planning, performance monitoring, cross-border power trade, and I'm not going to go through all of them. So he's quite well known. So Mr. Prasad, I would also like to thank you for joining us today, agreeing to be our keynote speaker and also be also a panel member. So over to you, Mr. Prasad.
Good evening to all. and good morning to those who are joining from US. Thank you for inviting me to be as a keynote speaker for this great event, which we had been carrying on for last few years. And as Michael said, that before he leaves India, probably this is going to be his good gift to India by way of this kind of study. In fact, when I look back, when we were discussing about its integrities in the beginning, I recall at that time, most of the people were saying that whether storage will be a practical solution in the Indian context or not. A lot of debate happened at that time, and then we decided from ministry saying that why not to start. In fact, the argument that used to be given at that time and even now is that we have enough installed capacity. Say, for example, as on date, we have something like 373 gigawatt of installed capacity, which constitutes around, the peak demand, which last year occurred, was around 183 gigawatt. That means roughly the installed capacity itself is twice the demand that we are meeting. And this peak demand also occurs only for a few days in a year. So big question that was being asked at that time is, do we really need this kind of movement, particularly towards the renewable or towards the non-fossil fuel? And in the mid of it, what happened is, just excuse me, I'll just take this call.
Sure, no worries.
Extremely sorry for this because I just got a call from Minister. What I was trying to convey a message is that even though we have been moving towards self-sustainability into the power sector, starting with generation, we have achieved self-sufficiency, particularly in terms of the capacity addition in generation, in terms of interstate transmission system as well. The main focus area still is which is a concern with the Indian power sector is the distribution sector, wherein the maximum effort needs to be put in so that the viability of the entire value chain becomes imperative. Once we look at it in the distribution sector, as Mr. Amal Sinha also pointed out just now, is that it's the right time when we had finished the study with certain outcome. And at a time when they are planning to augment their system. There's a very key word which is involved in this is, do I need to contract power from outside, or can I have something which is right at the consumer point, which saves my infrastructure, and I'm able to serve the consumer in a better way. Particularly some of the innovative solutions which was brought in because of the storage was putting storage system right at the doorstep of the consumer with the augmenting the transformer itself, transformer capacity, which saves a lot of infrastructure starting from generator till the consumer point. It also saves in terms of the losses, which could otherwise happen if electricity has to come from a generating station to this point. Plus, it also gives me a reliability if it is right there at the consumer doorstep itself. All this and many more which will get innovated as we go along in this area is going to really give a different vision, give a different way forward, which the sector right now is looking at. Not only Indian power sector, but the power sector across the globe is looking at this kind of innovative approach in the power sector. Whether it could be a storage system at the distribution utility level, or it could be a large scale storage system for managing the grid, which is also being thought about. In fact, let me quote one of the example which recently occurred in the Indian power sector. I think all of you must be aware about it. It happened on 5th of April when Honorable Prime Minister of India announced that at 9 p.m. we will light out for 9 minutes. It looks very simple, that what if everybody switches electricity exactly at 9 and again brings it back at 9 after 9 minutes at 9:09 p.m. But the kind of effort that it had to be augmented with to make this as a success, and ultimately the report is now already published by POSOCO. I'll just put one figure here, that day we experienced a step down of something like 40,000 megawatt at around 9 p.m. And the biggest ramp down was 4,000 megawatt in 1 minute. Unprecedented. This has never happened in any electricity grid across the globe. We started experiencing the downfall just before 9 p.m. and continued a few minutes later to 9 p.m. And again at 9:09, the demand started picking up, and ramp up also happened in a similar manner. The good thing about Indian power system was that we had hydro capacity, which tried to channelized, and we had something like 28,000 megawatt supporting us with the hydro, some with gas and some with coal. But the major chunk of ramp down and ramp up was undertaken with the help of hydropower stations. The point that I would like to emphasize here is, as we keep on including more and more renewables into the system, whether it is solar, wind, or any other, the variations are going to be unpredictable. Whatever tools we apply, nature plays its own role, and there will always be unpredictability and the requirement of balancing power, which will be forced upon to the grid operator in a very short period of time. That is the time when the skill of the grid operator has to come and play. That will be the time when we have to look for some solution which can give me a ramp up or ramp down in a very quick manner. And I think that will be the time when the battery storage will kick in. Even though right now we have good support of thermal, which gives me a leverage from 55% to 85%. That means 30% of the capacity, which helps me to bring down. But this may not go for a long period because the capacity addition in thermal sector has declined to a greater extent. And we are also not very keen on adding more and more thermal power stations, particularly in view of the environmental concerns. And even though we have met the commitment what we made in Paris, even though our target was 40%, achieving 40% of non-fossil fuel by 2030, we have already reached a figure of 37.5% as on date. So very soon we will be touching that figure of 40% of non-fossil fuel, maybe in a year or so. We are going to be much above the target that was given to us at Paris. But the point here is that we would like to do it for our own good, not that we have committed at Paris. That's how we are doing it. We want that there has to be the environmental concerns needs to be taken care. I'm happy to see that there are certain firms also which are now picking up, particularly in the areas of electric vehicles. The policies, the government policies are also getting aligned to the prosumer, whether it is either rooftop or it is in terms of electric vehicles. Both of them can contribute a lot towards the grid power. We have already tried to augment the tariff policy, wherein we are bringing in the concept of prosumer. Maybe you'll find some more policies with respect to prosumers, which will give a push to this area. Some of the bids that you might have seen in terms of renewables, particularly the round the clock power bid, which was taken out by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. It's quite encouraging, and they are going to supply 100% power from renewable for the contracted capacity. The tariff discovered was also quite good. This gives us an encouragement that people are innovative and there are players which can bundle solar, wind, storage, could be even pump storage, or any other mechanism, so that they can feel proud to supply 100% renewable power on a round the clock basis. We are in the process of even making some more innovative combinations, which you will hear very soon. Maybe if to reduce the coal burning, we may like to have some kind of blending so that the coal consumption comes down and we are able to accommodate more and more renewables to cater to the needs of the Indian grid. The good thing that happens in India is we have a good diversity factor, right from east to west and even north to south. The things never remain same. When north peaks, the south doesn't have the demand. When south peaks, the north doesn't have the demand. Same happens with east and west. The diversity factor is going to give us another advantage in terms of the management of the grid, and which can further lead to flattening of the curve and better demand management. And if we add storage to it, then nothing like it. Probably we will be able to manage it in a more optimum manner, so that we can even bring down the cost of power supply if we are able to optimize the resource adequacy. So another area of interest that we are undergoing or we are planning for Indian scenario is, can we think of a resource adequacy plan which will include the storage as well, so that we are able to optimize the entire kitty or entire portfolio of power generation and so that the cost of power generation reduces, ultimately leading to the reduction of cost of supply to the individual customers. So all these are some of the good key initiatives that the government keeps on thinking. And let me convey my thanks to the entire GTG team, Michael and Monali and others from LBNL, and of all the BSES, Mr. Amol Sinha, because it's very hard to find the first person who can take up the initiative. And it was BSES who took that initiative and who throughout the journey, they have cooperated in the entire study. It's easier to replicate further, but I must compliment BSES on taking the first initiative and cooperating with LBNL and GTG team to come out with this kind of report. So thank you, and I hope we move forward from here. And in fact, LBNL, we are associated with some more studies which Ministry of Power has already sponsored. So we'll be expecting more and more. So appetite is much higher and we expect to go along. And Michael, don't worry, we'll not leave you even if you leave from India. We'll catch you wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ghanshyamji, for sharing all the initiative with the Government of India is taking on both RE development, RE integration, as well as, low carbon growth strategy. And heartening to know that we will be hitting the, the GOI will be hitting the commitment much before the due date, the targets which were set. So, Michael, I see that your mic is on. Do you want to share something before we launch the reports?
I really just wanted to say thank you very much to Ghanshyamji for his beautiful words and his encouragement and for his best wishes. It's very, very, very nice to have you with us this evening. And I'm grateful for your friendship and your leadership. That's it.
Great. Thank you. So we are now just at the juncture when we can launch the report. And if I may ask your permission, Mr. Prasad, Michael, and Mr. Sinha, do we have your permission to launch the report, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great.
You have mine. I'm gonna go.
Great. Seems like we are running into a little bit of glitch. Okay, there's
So we can clap virtually at least.
Yeah, thank you so much. So now we will move on to the presentation on both the two reports which have been released today. We will first move on to Adarsh Nagarajan from NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, to make the presentation on the first study, which was basically preparing distribution utilities for utility scale storage and electric vehicles, a novel analytical framework. Adarsh is a group manager at NREL and he was the principal investigator for this particular study. He has a deep expertise in a variety of emerging technologies in distribution system, especially those associated with storage and DER. So over to you, Adarsh. We will just quickly bring up your slides. Ripu?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Monali. Okay, this is, yeah, I can see the slides. It's great. Okay, here, I'm just figuring out the arrangement of my screen. Great. So I'm excited. I want to start with how excited I am to be a part of this project to start with, and this whole effort, the relationships with the utility and Ministry of Power, USAID. Everyone is so great. Everyone is so driven to help the situation and make things better. Just such a fantastic partnership between people here. During the next 15 minutes, I'll be providing a sneak peek into the report that was just released. The report is extremely detailed into the results that I'll be bringing up in the next 15 minutes. So please take a look at the report. You will have so much more insight into what I'm saying and why. I have down selected, very selected impactful findings so that we can use the time more efficiently. Next slide. So it's not me, right? One needs a village to make the rain happen. I was fortunate to have this amazing team at NREL Without them, we could not have made an impactful effort that you are seeing now at all. So a big thanks to the team that you can see here on the slide 2. And I very much appreciate and thank them for their continued support and guidance. Moving on to the next slide, which is slide 3. Distribution utilities all over the world, are facing unprecedented growth in emerging technologies. When I use the word emerging technologies, I refer to solar, storage, and electric vehicles. For example, solar and storage and electric, between these 3 emerging technologies, each of these have different impact on the grid. For example, increased solar reduces load and revenue for utilities and brings in over voltage issues. Increased electric vehicles add base load and without proper maintenance will cause lower voltage. However, the common theme between solar and electric vehicles are that they pose grid operation challenges, whereas putting energy storage at right locations, at right size, and operating them the right way will actually help with adoption of the other technologies as well as stability of the grid. Moving on to the next slide, which is slide 4. In the study described that we just released the report, we take a closer look at these diverse challenges and help utilities convert these challenges to opportunities. We achieve that by developing a novel, futuristic distribution planning framework that helps utilities look at beyond classic distribution planning. If not for energy storage, utilities have been, as Honorable CEO Mr. Ramal Sinha mentioned, BRPL is already achieving great success in reduced losses, in amazing maintenance of power system and everything. But with newer technologies, the challenges are different. They are not the same. So what we did is we took the challenges that come with these new technologies and we developed the advanced distribution planning framework that incorporates emerging technologies at the get-go. Utilities should be able to count in solar, storage, and EVs even when they are planning a distribution transformer upgrade or a line upgrade. They are not independent. They both are linked very similarly because they both are connected to the same power grid here. Thus, providing DISCOMs or utilities ability to keep sight on capital costs, avoided power outage, deferral costs, voltage benefits, reusability of assets, to mention a few. And the report goes into extreme details about those. Moving on to slide 5. What I did is, in order to save the time that we have and utilize the time the better way, I picked up few notable outcomes. What I mean by these notable outcomes, we had so many interesting findings, but in order to be able to say what were the key insights, I did this slide. In this slide, I have listed selected insightful outcomes from this study. The report has so much more details. As we get further into the slides, I will get into selected results. So let's move on quickly into the interesting insights right away. Let's quickly get into the reusable framework that was developed in the effort. So let's move to slide 7 with the interest in time. So this reusable framework that you can see here has been developed with extreme care, and our purpose here is to basically have utilities link all the assets and use them the right way. This framework is not meant to be for BRPL in any way. It's meant to be for any utility or any research institution for them to learn or utilize or help NREL learn if we have missed out something. This framework considers existing equipment along with possible solar, storage, and electric vehicles. With all of these information, this framework can help utilities perform technical and economic analyses, thus constituting a techno-economic analysis. I want to spend a few seconds on this terminology, techno-economic analysis. There are numerous ways people have understood it. The way we have dealt it is, as I said, the framework can perform a series and a bunch of technical simulations and analysis, and then we perform economic analysis. Then we interlink them and we help utilities pick the action items out of it and run with it. And informed decision making is what we are getting towards, such that when you say you want to buy a storage, when you want to buy a distribution transformer, you are making an informed decision and be confident about the decision that you are making. Moving on to slide 8. Moving further, we will get into some more specific findings on battery energy storage. Energy storage, as you all know, is an asset of extreme interest to everyone. And the question here is how to use them, how to size them, how to operate them. There's so many questions that come with it. That's what we'll be getting into some of the key findings in the next 3 to 4 slides. Let's move on to slide 9, which is all about battery sizing. Sizing battery is quite a debatable topic. There has been numerous approaches all around the world. But the way we look at it is storage, as you all understand, is an expensive asset. Keeping that in mind, if one has a decision to make on battery sizing, it's natural for utilities to plan for the worst case scenario. That's being human, that's perfectly fine. But since the asset is expensive and has a life to it, in this study, we learn and proposed that optimally sizing the battery asset, I'm not saying undersizing, I'm saying optimally sizing, is key in order to save costs and also get necessary benefits, which means we, as a part of the framework, take a closer look at the marginal benefits from adding extra capacity, and we compare that with costs and technical benefits, and we help utilities understand how to reduce the size strategically so that they don't lose much value, but still get the maximum benefit and save money, so that utilities can make decisions with ease. Going further, what are the benefits of choosing a storage over something else if there's a choice for utilities? So as a part of this study, we identified an algorithmic way for identifying charge and discharge thresholds. So the bottom line here is you buy a battery, you size a battery, you buy a battery. How do you charge and discharge a battery, say for peak shaving or any use case? How do you choose what to do with the battery, when to charge, when to discharge? So we, as a part of this report, spent a lot of time describing in the report as well as in the study, identifying how can utilities easily identify the charge and discharge thresholds so that all distribution transformers can actually have increased benefits. Utilities, not all transformers should or can have the same threshold for charge and discharge. And we have an easy way to identify it by looking at the load duration curve. Details are in the report. Moving on to the next slide. Choosing the right charge and discharge thresholds has also continued impact. It's not about just energy or capacity. It also comes to the battery life. Battery life directly comes to how long you will use the battery. Choice of choosing the right charge discharge settings directly decides how many cycles the battery goes through within a month, within a year. And this report details on how to choose the battery settings and their impacts on their cycling as well. So the framework can further help utilities look into, if I make a certain choice, how many cycles am I running within a year or within the next 10 years, if you want to look at those time frames. Let's go on to the next topic. The following section, this is slide 12 at this point, the following section will address the question that we were frequently asked as we were looking into the study working with Ministry of Power as well as the utility. How does battery affect the loss on the distribution system? Although the losses are so low in BRPL, that clearly told to us that how keen they are about efficiency of the system. So we took a deeper dive into that. So moving on to slide 13, you will all see that there are two sets of results there. One on the left contains a low duration curve before and after adding battery energy storage system. Easy way to read this graph is that the green and the red low duration curves are better than orange and blue. The reason I'm saying that, I'm saying better there, is because it goes to the premise of how a distribution transformer operates. As you all understand, distribution transformer has increased efficiency ranging when the transformers operate between 40 to 80%. When I ballpark the numbers here, as the transformer gets increasingly loaded, the efficiency drops, or as the transformer gets utilized less than 30%, the efficiency also drops. So that means the storage can actually help flatten the load curve of a distribution transformer, thus reducing the distribution transformer losses further. That's what the graph on the right is illustrating as well. For different distribution transformers on the test distribution feeder, we could see that as the storage charge discharge thresholds were changed, the losses also changed, and also we can see reduction overall when it comes to classic upgrades, such as replacing a transformer with another transformer. That was another observation. So moving on, moving towards slide 14 here, we will look into recommendations on how to go about procuring battery energy storage system. When I say how, the question is between should I buy a large storage today, or should I procure a little at a time in the next few years? That's what I mean by how. So let's get into the fundamentals of long-term duration distribution planning. Moving on to slide 15. Speaking of long-term, distribution planning happens not for just tomorrow or this year, next 5 to 10 years. That's how utilities can predict the costs coming their way and make informed decisions. So we compare traditional upgrades in the sense utility can replace a transformer with another transformer. When there's a line upgrade needs to be done, you replace a new line, right? So that's what I mean by traditional upgrades. And on the other case, if there is a chance for them to look at buying batteries, that's second scenario where instead of buying one large distribution transformer today, can I buy another battery, place them somewhere not too far from the transformer, and can I defer the upgrade for a certain duration? Still getting the benefits. That was the scenario that we are comparing. We compare cost between them, and this report contains a lot of details on these. So moving on to the next slide, we summarized the whole question here into two scenarios, standard and staged deployment scenarios. What we mean by this is as follows. When it comes to long-term distribution planning, utility can choose to either buy a large battery, right? Say they choose to buy a battery, should you buy one large battery that's good for the next 10 years, or can they stage them? Can they buy half of it now and half 5 years later, or 1/3 of it now, or whatever size we want now, and then we keep augmenting them? That's what all this is about. Moving on to slide 17, we actually look at the economic impacts of these questions. For example, if a utility wants to buy a 3600 kilowatt hour battery, choosing, you can either buy one large 3600 kilowatt hour battery, or you can buy them in different ways. So in this slide 17, we can see that either you can, we compared three scenarios here: buy utilities buy one large battery at once, or scenario two, they buy it in fewer chunks like 2 or 3, and the other is a lot more fine-tuned. You buy once in every 3 years on an average. When we looked at these technically and economically, we made sure that technically there is no difference between the three scenarios, right? To confirm that point, even when you buy a smaller battery year one, the benefits that you are getting is still good, as much as you are having a larger battery. Moving on to slide 17. This is a very interesting slide according to me, and we spent a bit of results time on the report as well. What we realized is that utility can actually save up to 13% of costs by choosing the right approach, that's staging batteries. And the analysis, actually, the report you can see, we looked at numerous costs. We looked at the, the question here is, if I buy battery every 3 years, what happens to labor and numerous other things? The report goes into a lot of details about it. We compare different approaches. We spent a lot of time looking at values of all those things. So the results are pretty much vetted, and it's a very interesting finding. One of the main reason why we are even seeing this value that you can save 13% by staging is primarily based on the fact that the costs of storage are expected to drop further. And that's one of the main things that you are banking on as you buy battery in stages. You can take advantage of reduced costs in the next few years. That's the reason why you are seeing these benefits. That's all about storage. Let's move on to slide 18. The final set of insights that you'll be seeing from me will be about inclusion of energy storage with a EV-rich distribution feeder. Going further to slide 19, distribution transformer, as you all know, is a tricky equipment. As easy and as intuitive the equipment is, it has its it has its ways of operating. What we did is, when we added energy storage on a typical distribution network that we had for our analysis, and we tuned up, we added a lot of electric vehicles on top of that. And the report has the values and the numbers. And after that, we added battery energy storage at appropriate selected locations. When we did that, we could see that interlinking energy storage and electric vehicles actually completely helped utilities. In the sense, energy storage is this asset that goes well with another emerging technology, may it be solar, may it be electric vehicles. The moment you put storage next to these emerging technologies, the value of the other asset also increases. That's what the observation is. The utilization of distribution transformer gets better, in the sense the operation region of distribution transformer comes within the range of 40 to 80% of its nominal rating, thus reducing system losses. And another interesting observation that we found in the next slide, slide 20, is there is a direct impact on putting energy storage appropriately at right locations on an electric vehicle rich grid to their costs on system upgrades. Well, what we found is, as you can see, there are two distribution network topologies, one on the top, one on the below. One on the top consists of numerous red points that you can see, a series of red points. So what we did is, we looked at EV rich scenario, and we said that we assume there is no energy storage of any sort, right? In that case, with a high EV penetration, a distribution network topology had a requirement of 126 lines to be upgraded, and that's a lot. That's almost exceeding 2 to 3 miles of line upgrades. Inclusion of energy storage at right locations, which means at right distribution transformers or at right points in distribution feeder, led to a reduction in 85% of those instances. So out of 126 upgrades with inclusion of right distribution located energy storage, there was 85% reduction in those. And details of these use cases are in the report. So in the end, as we can summarize, the key takeaways that I want to mention here are, which is the last slide from my side. As we worked 1 year with the utility USAID, and as we interacted with Ministry of Power, the questions we received were so amazing for us to work on. The key takeaways are battery energy storage, if properly used, is highly beneficial. You might not see return on investment right away because not all monetizable values are there, and not all the benefits that storage can provide are monetizable. So it's a bit of a trick there, but storage properly used is certainly beneficial. Storage provides additional performance criteria that transformer upgrades alone do not. So if there's a choice between should I buy a new transformer or should I buy a battery, if you look at the framework that we have developed, that will help you make a decision between one or the other. Storage brings device upgrade deferrals and yet enables EV penetration. Reusable and scalable framework that we have developed for utilities certainly eases the process of decision making and helps utilities be confident about what they are thinking and why. Due to the reducing costs of battery energy storage in the next, it's already reduced a lot and it's continuing to reduce. Staging battery deployments is more cost saving for utilities. And there is enough evidence in the report that we have observed that that's true. So with all these key interests and findings, I want to urge you all to take a look at the report. I very much appreciate all the opportunity I had to learn and be maybe able to help at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adarsh. A lot of interesting findings. The report is available on NREL site, and we will also be sharing the link. So please be sure to go and download the report and go through it. Adarsh will also be available on the panel discussion. So if you have any question, please put it in the comment box so that he can take it up subsequently. Now let us come to the next part of the program, which is the next presentation on the reports, the second report which was launched. This will be presented by Mr. Anish Mandal, who is the lead on EV and EVs at USAID GTG-RISE Initiative. Anish is the director of the Power Utilities Consulting in Deloitte and has a vast experience. Anish will present the key highlights from the white paper on electric vehicle, as well as he will be presenting also some of the results from the modeling exercise which was conducted by GTG-RISE on the economic analysis of BESS with BRPL. So I will ask the presentation to be put on. Thank you, Ripu. And can I request Anish to take over?
Sure. Thanks, Manali. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, Adarsh, for highlighting the technical usage and as well as value what storage brings in. But I think the first part of the presentation, I will quickly highlight what comes as an extended support to what NREL did, which he suggested that doing an analysis or separating out the monetizable benefits is definitely challenging. But again, from the regulatory perspective, if you want to create a business case for putting a battery storage, you need to come out with an economic business case. So that's what we tried for BRPL to model the economic benefits for putting a battery storage. Ripu, if you can go to the next slide. Yes, as Mr. Sinha highlighted as well, so BRPL is planning around 1200 megawatt of renewables to be installed by 2022, and that forms around almost 29% of the overall installed capacity planned by 21-22. And that's definitely a big amount to manage the variable renewable energy, and therefore storage is definitely a consideration for the utility, how to improve the reliability of the grid. Yeah, so the key questions, Ripu, the next slide, please. Yeah, so the key questions what were posed in terms of the modeling study was, what are the various benefits that BESS is going to provide, and how do you value those? The second would be what would be the optimal capacity for BESS to be deployed, looking at the existing kind of portfolio, and as well as the load duration curve and the charging power availability, everything, and then the economic cost as well. And third is there an economic feasibility or business case for deployment of BESS? As others highlighted, it may not make an economic sense right away, but storage, if kind of appropriately used, brings a lot of value. Right, so the next slide. There's a three apart from what probably a lot of people know, that Tata Power has installed a 10 megawatt battery in their distribution network, but that's primarily used to reduce the DSM penalties. And that's not a regulatory kind of a case, because that's a penalty strictly to be reducing the additional DSM as well as sign change penalty. So a regulated case can actually, what are the benefits which can actually be considered are, one, the battery can provide ramping support when required. Two is it provides energy arbitrage if there is an arbitrage available, if you can charge your battery at a suitable time where the cost is low, and therefore you can offset some of the high cost power, that provides an energy arbitrage. And third is, as a result of what others also highlighted, use your BESS in the in a kind of improving your technical reliability, then it reduces the losses in the system, and as well as, of course, it defers the capex which is required. Say a particular transformer is getting overloaded, or lots of transformers are getting overloaded, so it defers the investment by the life of the battery. So these are the three major costs or main costs which we can actually kind of model. The next slide. This is shown in terms of a load duration curve as well, of a typical BRPL and as well as generation dispatch profile. We used our proprietary model to kind of model this or simulate this. So what I said roughly, the one is the ramping benefit. You see when in the evening there is a sudden reduction in renewable profile, and there is a ramp which is picking up, the evening ramp and the night ramp. So therefore, all your stations has technical constraints, both ramping as well as technical minimums. So therefore, the utility might experience ramping benefits or ramping support requirement. The second is, of course, the energy arbitrage, which is at the night peak. You might kind of run your expensive gas stations or expensive stations, or procure power from the kind of merchant basis. So that's when you can use your base if there is a sufficient arbitrage available. And third is when to kind of charge. So there are possible charges because there are restrictions on number of cycles to be used in a battery. I will get into those details, but mainly on a plain vanilla approach, you charge when the charge cost is low. And when the charge cost is low is early morning hours, probably. And the second is when you add more and more renewables, and this is kind of similar phenomenon across India, that the renewables would of course add a lot of surplus power or a lot of power in the daytime during say 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And if you do a kind of centralized modeling or centralized dispatch of India, there will be surpluses, there will be curtailment requirement which is coming on during those periods. So that's when you should charge your kind of power. So apart from renewables also, you will be probably shifting down all your thermal stations, even if they are kind of peated stations with a very low variable cost, you will bring down your stations to the technical minimums. Those are the slots which you identify and then you charge. So you modeled it on a half-hourly basis or a 15-minute basis to identify the ramping requirement as well as slot by slot, what kind of charging algorithm you can use. And then what I said, the capacity deferral benefits also, we calculated through a network load network diagram. Yeah, next slide. So quickly, the data used was the real data, and we assumed certain assumptions were there. What I said, 1200 megawatt of renewables, and we modeled the system. You can go to the next slide. Straight away come to the results. Yeah, so this is a quick analysis based on the analysis what we carried out for 10 years. So the light green is the number of slots with more than 20 megawatt unmet ramp requirement. And what we see is the average ramp requirement is the dark green, which is something around 100 to 200 megawatt, but the mode was around 20 megawatt. So that's why we thought, of course, when you increase or when you go in 2027, 2028, the ramp requirement increases. But to start a pilot with what is the mode kind of requirement that you achieve in 2022 is around 20 megawatt. So we modeled the system for 20 megawatt and tried to develop a regulatory business case for this deployment. Yeah, go to the next slide. And this is what I said, when you charge and which kind of months you charge. So when you model the system for all the slots and as well as all the year around, so you exactly know when to charge your battery and when to discharge in terms of slots as well, and whether those requirements are coinciding or aligning with what the requirements of the ramp requirements are or the arbitrage requirements are in terms of months and year. So that analysis was done. Yeah, next slide. So, and these are some of the assumptions of the battery. Of course, so battery charging efficiency was 85%. Lifespan is around 14 years. So for a 7,000 cycle battery, usually the degradation curve, if you see, it's around about 14 years, 15 years, downgraded to 70%. And that's when your kind of reliability ends. Cost of peak energy supply is around 7 rupees, what BRPL currently has. Cost of charging before peak, what we have considered is around 3.63, and cost of charging before 5 o'clock in the morning, it's around IEX average IEX price, so 2.81. And the ramping benefits is when you don't get a ramp, then the distribution utility have to go out in the market and probably buy a ramp, and that could be probably the maximum DSM charge, because the ramping benefits is also coinciding with the evening ramp, and that's when all the utilities around about probably in the country will face a similar kind of a challenge. So when everyone goes to the market, of course, the price hits the maximum. So that's what we have considered. And then there are capex cost of transformers and other things which we have considered. Yes, next slide. Next slide, Ripu. Right. So when you do a model, when you model it for the entire life here, so the benefits which is coming out per megawatt basis is around 66 or 67 lakhs on a levelized basis. Whereas the cost, if you take battery costs in today's budgetary quotes, of course, there are reductions possible on budgetary quotes, but budgetary quotes based on whatever initial quotes we had. Next slide, if you give. So it was coming around 121 lakhs per megawatt. Ripu, if you can go to the next slide. Yes. So around 112 lakhs per megawatt versus around 67 lakhs per megawatt. So the effective cost of the battery which needs to be funded comes to be around 46 lakhs per megawatt. So if you put a battery with an effective cost of 46 lakhs per megawatt, then you get these benefits which can be passed on to the consumers, of course. So that's the analysis what we have done. And the next slide, what it shows is currently the AFC is around, say, 46 lakhs for battery, but when you compare with the AFC of all the existing stations, it's much more. So therefore, the regulator might find a merit to kind of accommodate this investment because it improves the reliability and as well as gives you certain consumer benefits as well. Right. That's the concluding remark for the first bit of the study. I will quickly go to the next, which is the EV white paper and what are the findings and analysis on that. Ripu, yes. Right. So I think EVs world over is definitely a kind of, I would say, one of the hot topics and as well as a reality that there will be a transformative kind of transition towards e-mobility, and therefore how distribution utilities can actually rightly place, or what is the kind of strategy which the distribution utilities can adopt is the scope of the study. And we have extensively researched globally case studies, successful case studies, what has happened, and we are highlighting. There will be Bibu who is leading the grid modernization and as well as strategy for Southern California Edison in US. He is part of the panel and he has provided his inputs, and we are thankful for to him for providing his inputs as well. Yes, if you can go to the next slide. So if you see world over, what has happened, distribution utilities has taken the pivotal role to actually scale up the EV charging stations. It's not the transport sector, it's not the private sector, but probably an equal amount of, I would say, contribution would be from the distribution utilities. And what are the 4 big considerations that the distribution utilities have to take by integrating these EVs in their grid is 1, the network upgrade. So key challenge for an utility is actually to model the network and see what kind of impact it generates at different kind of solutions. The second aligned kind of thought is what would be the impact on the several components of the network as well. So you do a extensive modeling on say TOU and on various levels of kind of when EV is getting charged at different hours of the day, and also at different penetration levels and how that affects your network. Right, so that's the impact on components and what others also highlighted. So you put those innovative kind of solutions and see how that network again behaves on that. So you put battery storage, or you introduce TOU, you introduce managed charging, active managed charging when I say, and then you see what kind of impact it generates. So all that needs to be modeled. Then the third bit is the location. So where in the network I would first prioritize my EVAC locations or EV charging locations is one important factor which needs to be done. So there are certain feeders which might get overloaded, but there are certain feeders there that might have substantial margin even for the next 5 years, 6 years. So why not prioritize those locations and have a prioritization strategy around that to lay out the distribution network. The fourth is the business model, like utilities, if they want to invest in the EVAC network, so what kind of business models they follow. So these are the 4 broad considerations, what needs to be done while you think about EV as a distribution utility, right? 4. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as a case study, we want to highlight Sacramento Municipal Utility District Smart, which is a municipality in the US, and what they have done as a part of the kind of study, or what they have done as a part of impact analysis of EVs. So on the right-hand side, you see the entire network and how EVs have impacted the overall network. So what it kind of means is, so there needs to be a planning, the scenario-based planning, what I said, on the several scenarios, on the several penetration levels, and the several hours of the day, you see that what kind of impact it generates the EVs in your grid. And accordingly, you calculate what kind of components you need to change, you need to augment, and therefore you come out with a cost estimation or a CapEx kind of a plan, right? So once you have gone with or once you have derived a CapEx plan, you go to the regulator for rate filing, or this analysis becomes a part of the rate filing, and therefore there is a solid evidence-based kind of modeling that you do for the regulator to approve these investments. Right. So that's one of the critical considerations for any utility to do that. And then the fourth one, what I said, is impact on consumer behavior. Once you have done the modeling, then it becomes an important enabler for you to start a dialogue with your regulator that let's kind of initiate a TOU mechanism, for example, or active managed charging mechanism where you can throttle down the load. And therefore, if that reduces your investment by kind of 60–70%, that's what the modeling has suggested in Sacramento, that around 70% of your investments you can reduce by actually doing a excellent planning or doing this modeling exercises. So that's what's the outcome of the case study that we're going to highlight. And then we have in the next slide, Ripu, if we can just move to the next slide, we'll quickly highlight the so we have also modeled a BRPL network. Thanks to Abhishek and Mr. Sena for sharing the infrastructure data and as well as guidance on how to model it and what should be the outcomes of the model, laying out the objectives of the model. So what it means is we have analyzed the loading pattern for year on year on a 10-year basis, and we have analyzed what kind of, for which of the DTs which are getting overloaded. Right? So once you understand that your DD1 is getting overloaded in, say, for example, in year 3 or year 4, then it becomes a deep dive analysis that in that year, if we analyze all the slots and what are the instances of overloading. So whether there is a pattern in overloading, right? So whether in particular blocks in a year, say, you will see the results right in those graphs, small graphs. So 1 to 48, like these are half hourly blocks. So if there is a pattern of data getting overloaded in a particular slots. So once you know those, there is a definite pattern, then you know that these are manageable instances. And these manageable instances could be like, again, going back to the regulator and saying, please allow TOU incentives. Therefore, you can manage these kind of overloading instances, or you please allow manageable or managed charging or throttling down. And some of these are unmanageable instances for them here to do your network planning. So that was the main outcome. We went by DT and we said that this is your kind of, these are the DTs which are not getting overloaded. These are the DTs which you can manage your overloading through regulatory interventions. And these are the DTs which you need to augment. So therefore, there comes a prioritization strategy for an utility that before you come up, kind of venture into an EV network or EV, laying out your EV deployment strategy, you exactly know what kind of prioritization which you need to do. Right. Next slide. So the 4 broad regulatory or key regulatory interventions for enabling EV charging is the first and foremost, most important, I would say, is cost recovery of network upgrades. So when you do these cost recoveries or when you do these network upgrades, so there needs to be a cost recovery plan also. And cherry picking consumers who are contributing to this kind of network upgrades is not a solution, not a, of course, a feasible solution. Therefore, kind of rate basing of these network upgrades or this capital expenditure has to be done. And this has been the case world over. California, for example, has a charge-ready infrastructure kind of program where any infrastructure which is planned or which has been augmented by the utility, that becomes part of the rate basing or rate filing. So that's the enablement which you need to create. Second is the tariff framework. Of course, what I said, the TOU tariff and as well as the consumer tariffs needs to be incentivized so that consumers more and more adopt kind of a EV tariff or more and more purchase electric vehicles. And then the third is creating a managed charging framework. So managed charging have 2 kind of segregations, the active managed charging and passive managed charging. So active managed charging is where this is an integrated operations of an utility where through kind of digital interventions, you manage the system or you manage the EVAC network and you can actually throttle down or a load. So therefore, that's the active managed charging, and the passive managed charging is through incentivizing or TOU or implementations of TOU tariff. And the fourth one is a market-based framework for enabling EV and other DR providers to participate in ancillary services. Because of course, EVs can be treated as load and as well as distributed generators because of the batteries in the EVs. So therefore, going forward, a vehicle to grid integration and therefore an extended or enhanced operations of the distribution needs to be enabled through participation of these EVs and as well as DR providers into the market. Yes, last slide, Ripu, kind of wrap up slide. Yes, so the 4 broad conclusions from the report, you can go through the report. It has lots of international examples and as well as kind of conclusions as well as key takeaways from the studies. So the 4 broad takeaways are there needs to be adequate capacity planning for at least a 10-year horizon for any utility before they kind of venture into a EV network integration. And this planning should be scientific modeling studies as others highlighted. BRPL has taken an initiative in doing this analysis. So there needs to be a scientific analysis under various kind of scenarios, under various penetration levels where you study the network and accordingly frame up a capital investment plan for you. Third is utilities should of course start active dialogue with the regulators in kind of following up with the 4 broad interventions what I highlighted in the last slide. And fourth is mechanisms such as rate basing and as well as ancillary services would definitely go a long way in enabling and as well as scaling up EVs. That would be all. Manali, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anish. And since we are running behind schedule, We will quickly move on to our next part of our program, which is the panel discussion. And I will now pass it on to Shubhranshu, who is quite well known, so it needs no introduction. So over to you, Shubhranshu.
Thank you, Manali. And let me start by inviting two distinguished members, additional members to the panel. So we've had the privilege of Bibhu Kaushik joining us. Bibhu, as Anish mentioned, is the Director of Transmission Distribution Business Strategy at Southern California Edison. One of the finest thinkers in the industry contemporarily, and also a very well recognized international utility leader. Instructively, in his previous role, he led the Southern California Edison's grid modernization roadmap, which was in large part to do with DER integration, so very relevant to the topic that we're discussing. The other panelist is Abhishek Ranjan, again, very well known, AVP System Operations and Head Renewables and DSM Initiatives at BSES Rajdhani Power Ltd. Apart from his day job in system operations, he's driving the adoption of new energy technologies, all the advanced bits around DERs and new energy systems at BRPL, and therefore was the direct counterpart for these studies. So without further ado, let's start with the panel discussion. I would invite Mr. Prasad because he has to go first. He's pressed for time. So, sir, if I can bring you in first. So one of the things that the study notices is that strong policies have been instrumental worldwide in driving market transformation of emerging technologies. So we wanted to hear from you on how central government in India is driving market transformation of both battery energy storage systems and EVs. So if you could comment on that, sir.
I think in my opening statement also I stated regarding the intention of the Government of India and the way we are moving forward in promoting renewables. So if that is so, then battery storage will definitely come along with it. The analysis of others and the other speaker, it's really good. And I think if we can share this study with the other utilities, probably we will be able to gain more insight and we'll be able to solve some of the problems that the other distribution companies are facing. BSES had been managing its system well, but there are other discoms which are state-owned discoms. These distribution companies, they don't plan the way either Tata Power or the BSES, they are doing it in Delhi or Mumbai. And looking forward to such kind of solutions. So that is one way we want that, in fact, Government of India focus is on the distribution sector, and particularly the distribution companies which are not doing well. So they need to be roped in for this kind of activity, and so that the benefit can be enhanced. That's one part of the involvement part of it. As regards the policy front, towards EV, the focus is already there, and maybe through because a lot of ministries are involved in this, coordinated by NITI Aayog or even Ministry of Surface Transport and Ministry of Power. So I think all the ministries are doing their own bit. But the focus definitely is onto the EVs, and we would like to promote EV in a big way. Because the very fact that we don't have oil resources in the country, and we are heavily dependent on the import of this energy commodity, the import part has to be reduced. And if we have to do that, probably this is going to be one of the key area in the transport sector, wherein we'll be able to reduce that burden of Government of India. So that is how the focus is going to be there, and particularly from the angle of reduction of import bill in the country. So energy definitely will now have a relook towards the battery or towards the EV side. EV definitely will have another advantage of in terms of the policy by allowing them to be a source which can participate into the demand response area as well, going forward from here. If that is so, then this entity will have to be recognized by way of policy, so that we are able to, I mean, they don't face much of a problem when they try to integrate into the system and they try to participate in the demand response area. Regarding the grid connected, I think it was nicely brought out that we need to take a decision at a right time to integrate, neither over nor under. The quantity and the timing has to match with the requirement. And I think, and in this direction only, I had mentioned that we are planning for a dynamic resource adequacy plan, which was not happening so far in India. In fact, if you see the planning portion of electricity sector, what is happening in India is it's a long-term plan done by CA, which is normally for 5 years or 10 years, or could be even a higher horizon of 10 years, 20 years. Some of the perspective plans do cover that. But if you go back and analyze the planning vis-a-vis what actually happened in past, and whether can we have 100% dependency on the plan which has been put forth, you will find a lot of gaps. I think the best way to address such kind of gap and take a wiser decision in future would be to align all these plans dynamically and with operational parameter rather than going for a normative parameters. I think you understand what I mean now is because the planning, long-term planning is always done based on a normative parameters, wherein each and every element which goes into the power sector is put on a normative base, and then futuristic planning is done. I want some kind of a deviation from this kind of practice that is being followed to a practice wherein can we have it on an operational ground, because each machine has its own capability, each element has its own capability, its wear and tear, its vintage, its operational performance parameters. As it dynamically changes, so can we have a resource adequacy plan on a dynamic basis, could be upgraded twice a year. I mean, just a thought. So that at the end of the day, we are able to take that kind of a decision as a matter of either in terms of an operational requirement or as a matter of policy requirement, that this is the right time or this is the optimum time and this is the trajectory which we need to follow. In a small scale, you have already demonstrated that how the network planning can be done based on the right decision at a right point of time and right way of introducing the storage element and the savings that it really enhances. So, I mean, if this gets replicated on a national grid level, think of the enormity of or the volume that it is going to bring in. By that volume, I really mean is, I will just quote one example to you, is just look at the rise in the transmission charges that has happened in the country. Of course, we have achieved something, but at the same time, the transmission charges has more than doubled in last few years. Of course, we don't have any congestion as far as the power exchange is concerned. As far as the transfer of electricity from any point to any point is concerned in the country. And we have a single price, unlike anywhere in the world wherein the market splits and there are congestions and they do congestion management. I don't say that whether it is good or bad, but definitely we had been adding transmission lines so that to ensure that there is no bottleneck and the proper evacuation of power takes place in the country. We have achieved that, and there are fallbacks. Now, can we have another solution? Instead of adding the infrastructure, can we have another solutions, which gives one of the insight of this study. We say that, okay, there could be some other solutions which can avoid certain infrastructure addition as well. So all these kind of thing, whether it is from the operational perspective or from a planning perspective or from the policy perspective or regulatory perspective, I think all needs to be integrated and gelled together to get to some kind of optimal solution, what we are looking at in India. So we are totally aligned to the developments that is happening across the world, particularly in terms of the storage. And definitely look forward for such kind of policy changes, suggestions on the policy changes. And we are rather, I think Patnaik knows that how impatient we are with respect to the reforms and with respect to the market reforms that we are trying to take it forward. We don't have time, but we do have a lot of things to do in terms of reforms and the policy changes. That may lead even to the extent of the energy storage or could be in terms of any other areas in the electricity sector. Thank you. Monali, I think as I mentioned that since I have to leave for some other engagement, so thank you so much for inviting me to be on this platform and to be associated with the program. I would have loved to continue, but definitely I'll hear what has happened in the panel discussions from either you or from Patnaik. Thank you so much for inviting me and to be a part of this entire program. Once again, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for joining.
Moving on, can I bring Bibu in? Bibu, thanks for joining so early in the morning, all the way from California. So, as a segue from where Mr. Prasad left, can you give us some insights on what were the major policy and regulatory provisions which drove adoption of both batteries and EVs at substantial level of scale in California in particular, in general, and SC in particular, SC network in particular?
Hey, good morning, Shubhranshu. Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me clearly. It's an honor, pleasure to be able to join the panel this morning, and I congratulate USAID GTG-RISE, the Utility Ministry of Power for the white paper, EV white paper, as well as the NREL study that others presented on storage, DERs, and long-term distribution planning. I had the privilege to see some of the draft report work before, and it's very, very impressive, as well as very encouraging to see where the policies in India are heading. So as Shubhranshu introduced very generously, I work with one of America's largest electric utilities, Southern California Edison. We serve about 15 million customers in a footprint of about 50,000 square miles from central, coastal, and Southern California, about half of the southern half of California. And the company has been in existence ever since it light up Independence Day parade on July 4th, 1886. So if I do my math right, that's 134 years, one of the oldest electric utilities in America. California is on forefront of fight against climate change, and a lot of these changes, growth of distributed energy resources, growth of EVs, as well as battery energy storage, rooftop solar, is really driven by state's policy to drive to zero carbon. So if I look at the California's greenhouse gas emissions, and I look at where we were in 1990 level, the emissions went up, and they have come back with the recent policy changes just a little bit below the 1990 level now in 2020. And the vision is to take them down further 40% below that 1990 level by the year 2030. So cut overall state's carbon emissions about 450 million metric tons of CO2, cut that by 40% by 2030, 10 years from now. And if we continue on that slope, you could cut it by 80% by the year 2050 from that 1990 reference level. So that kind of sets the tone that the governor and the IOUs in California have subscribed to, and there's a strong mandate from a regulatory and a policy perspective to drive this. Edison, the company I work for, has been a leader in this area as well. Edison published its clean power and electrification pathway, our vision of the 2030, and what would it take, and what is the role of an electric utility? What can we do to support that state's vision? Which basically looked at, back in 2017, we were about 40% clean power, and we showed we'll go from that 40% clean power to 80% of our energy portfolio, whether we procure or generate, will be from carbon-free resources that will deliver to our customers by the year 2030. That will go from about 200,000 electric vehicles to about 5 million electric vehicles across the state by the year 2030. And since then, we did another sequel to the Clean Power and Electrification Pathway, supporting the state's policy for a zero carbon economy by the year 2045. So if you recall the original number of 450 million metric tons of CO2, the state has now made a mandate that by the year 2045, they want to get to a zero carbon economy. And not all of the carbon will go away. Even in that scenario, you're still left with about 100 million metric tons out of that 450 million metric tons. But then we look to sequester that CO2 or offset it through other programs to still meet that overall net zero. From the chronological perspective, Shubhranshu, I'll talk a little bit both about the storage and the EVs. So the storage in California really got started. I mean, Edison has been part of the storage journey for over 2 decades. We have a pretty, one of the most respected energy storage lab as part of our company, which from my experience is bigger than some of the EV manufacturers. If you go to Detroit, their energy storage lab. And we have been working on battery energy cells and their testing, life cycle testing, degradations, parameters for wholesale energy markets over the past 20 years. In the early years, some demonstration projects were done, both in distribution and transmission connected stations. But really in 2013, the storage OIR, Assembly Bill 2514 was passed in California, which was from the central regulator mandating the 3 investor-owned electric utilities, PG&E in San Francisco area, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric, to build or procure 1.325 gigawatts of energy storage, so 1,300 megawatts by the year 2020. That really started the first big market, and a lot of investments, a lot of third parties, storage developers came in. The IOUs, the utilities, held biennial, so every 2 years they had held a storage procurement in 3 cycles, 2014 to 16, 16 to 18, and 18 to 20, that invited a lot of competitive bids from the third-party storage developers, either for utility-owned and operated storage or a customer-owned and operated storage. After that bill, subsequent several bills came in this as California Assembly and State, including AB 2868, which mandated another 500 megawatt customer sited, 33% of which had to be behind the meter, to further bring in more technology innovation and more commercial interest into the storage market. So far, Edison has done either procure or built or committed to procure over 1.2 gigawatts of storage. Very recently, we announced one of the largest storage project just a few months ago, a procurement of 770 megawatts of storage with over 3,000 megawatt hours, so about a 4-hour duration, to replace one of the retiring natural gas plants. Prior to that, we had done over 550 megawatts of storage, meeting the mandates of that AB 2514 storage OIR and AB 2868. In addition to both of those, we also did some storage back in 2015, 2016, when we had an electric system reliability issue because of the natural gas system supply reliability issue. In a moment of crisis, when the grid needed more local flexibility, storage was the supply resource that was seen, which could be very quickly, rapidly built within a matter of few months. And it was very scalable, and it provided high ramping flexibility to the grid, which was required to make sure we don't have supply issues, we don't have blackouts back in 2016 and 2017 summers. That was the time when Edison partnered with Tesla and built the world's largest storage plant, 20 megawatt, 80 megawatt hour. This was 4 years ago. Those numbers look much small today. But those were the kind of projects that got the storage started. It was really backed by regulators with some clear mandates that got the market started, that got enough commercial interest. Today, storage competes with a lot of regular supply resources for bulk connected power, but also in distribution as non-wires alternative, as some of the other speakers talked about, and storage is becoming more and more competitive. I'll just take a minute to talk about electric vehicles as well. So from a numbers perspective, nationwide in US, we have over 1.5 million electric vehicles on the road today, passenger vehicles, out of which about 700,000 are in California. And out of which I will say about 225,000, a little more than that, is in our service territory. The EVs have also seen a very rapid increase over the past few years. We are at a point of inflection where we are seeing increasing number of new car sales are EVs in California, particularly Southern California. And so as a distribution electric utility, we want to make sure we provide the infrastructure where our customers can connect and benefit from the EV infrastructure. So one of the questions that come is, what is the role of distribution electric utility? How can a distribution electric utility and a regulator accelerate the growth of EVs in a state, in a country? And I boil it down into 3 categories. So number 1 is affordability, providing low costs in comparison to traditional vehicles. That could happen through providing charging station rebates for commercial and residential, providing new and used vehicle rebates, low carbon fuel standards, investing in customer side infrastructure, and offering special rates for EV charging. Second, after affordability, is availability. So making sure there is necessary infrastructure to fuel the EVs, both for passenger vehicles at workplaces, in multifamily units, apartments where people may not have the real estate. Single family homeowners have the real estate, they can have an EV station in the garage. Multi-family units, condos, high-rise apartments, it's important, and other places like schools, parks, offices. That's where the role of utility comes in, to be able to have those programs that can provide that charging infrastructure. The last one is awareness, providing market education and outreach programs. So over here, just quickly referring to a few things, if I were to share some numbers, total US utility investments in level 2 chargers. So level 2 is about 7 kilowatt. I saw Bharat 001 AC is about 10 kilowatts. So it's a low, that's what the comparison is. Total US utility investment has been about $1 billion in level 2 chargers, out of which about 75% has been in California to provide those level 2 charging infrastructures. Within Edison, we completed a Charge Ready program, as I think you and Anish mentioned, which provided for over 1,200 level 2 chargers that were successfully completed as of last year. There's also a continued funding for another 1,200 EV chargers while we were waiting for our Charge Ready 2, the second phase of Charge Ready, hopefully coming out soon, which is really the huge program. And Charge Ready 2 would provide 32,000 level 2 chargers, along with a few thousand DC fast chargers, several more rebates, also parts of which will provide EV charging infrastructure to apartments, government customers, turnkey solutions for schools, parks, other places. So what differentiates this Charge Ready program is, as a utility, we are not just providing, upgrading our transformer, service, and our panel and meter. That's not even Charge Ready. That's just our distribution planning, the way Adarsh was mentioning, and the way Anish talked about the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, the study they did with Black & Veatch and the SEPA, in which they modeled the 2030 scenario. But in Charge Ready, we also provide the customer side panel, so that the program covers the cost with service drop, meter panels, the circuit dedicated to the EV, basically provides ready end connections for the interconnection, in which the charging stations could just be plugged in by the third party. We as a utility are not in a business of buying charging stations, installing them. We produce and prepare that infrastructure so that the third parties can just plug in the charging stations, and they can have an O&M model to get these EVs going. So Shubhranshu, those are some of the programs that have been helpful in accelerating the growth of EVs and storage.
Thank you so much, Bivu. That was very well described, actually. So let me come next to Abhishek. Abhishek, as so many speakers mentioned, you have taken a lead in mapping out both battery energy storage systems as well as EV charging infrastructure within your network. So why don't you give us an insight on what are your plans for the future in terms of both battery energy storage systems as well as EVs? And if I can add a supplementary question to that, what are your expectations from in terms of policies and regulations in accelerating the adoption of these new energy systems? So over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Okay,
thank you. First, let me take the first one. I'll talk about the plans about the battery energy storage as well as the electric vehicles. So the battery energy storage we are looking at from two perspectives. One is in terms of the normal network planning. In Delhi, for example, the way we see the peak load and we analyze the load duration curves, the peak is coming for very few hours in the entire year. So that means if you are planning the network for the peak load, that you are underloading the network for the most part of the year. And then second, the space is an issue. So what we are now planning is, and we are only working on 6 such locations with the support of regulator, where the augmentation of the distribution network, first we'll see whether the peak shaving can be done with these kind of solutions. And then we'll go ahead with the wired network. So that means a non-wired alternative, but of course cost is a problem, and regulatory buy-in and regulatory approval on the rate base is another challenge which we are working on. So henceforth we are planning that at the DT level battery energy storage should be considered as one of the alternatives before we actually upgrade the distribution system through wired network. In terms of the grid level or utility scale, again the ramping which Anish was talking about, the ramping benefits which are accruing because, and they are necessary because of the renewable energy, the variable one which we have added, because they are not stable in terms of dispatchable from the source because of the nature of the wind and the solar. The natural variability is there. To provide ramping support and balancing in the absence of the balancing market as on date, whatever portfolio we have already added, for that we need some kind of stabling portfolio. That is where we are working on, and with a very small beginning that we have done. It's under process. On the electric vehicle front, let me tell and that the EV Charge Ready program of the Southern California Edison, I am personally very impressed with the kind of program. The first time I landed in California 2 years back, and I had a chance to get to know about it from CAB, California Air Resource Board. There is an office in Sacramento. So when I visited them, they have talked about how this program is running and how does it make a difference. Incidentally, that person in CAB was also from Delhi, and we thought that why can't we do something about it here in. And then on, we tried to work with the government of Delhi. Government of Delhi has come out with some policy which is to be notified in a larger way, EV policy of Delhi state. So in the EV charging front, we are playing the role of enabler as to how this can be done. Plug and play solution can be provided, metered connection, both at LT level and ST level. So that is the way we are moving forward. On our website, we have given the complete process and procedure. Anybody who is willing to A, contribute through space, B, as an OEM of the EV charger, C, as the complete charge point operator. Anybody can express their interest, and we will work on the location of the choice and see how, under the present regulatory model, the connection and connectivity can be provided at an optimal cost. Because conventional way of upgrading the distribution infrastructure has its own cost, which may not allow a viable economic operating of the current EV charging stations, because the load is very, very low and the utilization rate is low. So initially, these are the hiccups, and therefore we have to charge in an optimally planned way. What is the most optimal solution? So there we have been pursuing with the Honorable Commission that why don't we have a TOE rate notified for the electric vehicles pan-year throughout the year. So as of now it is there, but then A, it is not a deterrent enough for the managed charging, the passive managed charging, and B, it is there only for the summers, that is May to September. So that is where, and apart from that, there are multiple aspects on the managed EV charging and the way the connectivity is given. We are working with the regulator. So the plan is very, very straightforward. Another is A is the corporate adoption of e-mobility that we are already working, as our CEO talked about. We are working on transitioning the entire fleet into electric vehicles in a phased manner, right from 4-wheelers and 2-wheelers and hired vehicles as well. And there has been a very good regulation in place in Delhi. The regulator has allowed certain portion of electricity to be used for EV charge as a part of the distribution utility consumption. That is also a very welcome step by the regulator. He is promoting EV charging infrastructure right from 2 and 3-wheelers, but in focus area, and of course 4-wheelers. So we have started few of the charging stations collaboration with like share mobility partners in Delhi, South Delhi area, and we are now looking forward to having battery charging and swapping stations for the 2 and 3-wheelers together. And we have also done a stakeholder study very recently, and this was a very technical study that thanks to USAID and NREL. There is another study on the business models and what stakeholders think about it. So both the things together, we plan to have a chain and rollout in terms of MOP's guidance or guidelines for having a robust public EV charging structure. And one other thing is that the home charging infrastructure is the need of the hour, which is also coming out from the study report. There, the EV policy has certain guidelines where the DISCOMs are to play a role. We are trying to design a home charging EV program for the city of Delhi with support of the government of Delhi, of course, with the permission of the regulator here, because we are a regulated entity. Now, coming to the second question about what are the regulatory and the policy support which this battery energy storage and the PV will require. I mean, I'll start with the PV, the photovoltaic, and then we'll come to the EV and the BESS. The photovoltaic, obviously, I mean, there is a Ministry of New Renewable Energy program, which is called Rooftop Solar Program, which is a very good program in terms of subsidizing the CFA, Central Financial Assistance for kilowatt-based incentive. Very recently, we had the tender results, very encouraging results. And the Delhi government supplements it with the generation-based incentive. So more kilowatt hours you are producing from your solar, more benefit you are getting. So that is incentivizing performance. So both these taken together is doing well for the Delhi solar sector, and we are also promoting not only the residential consumers but also the commercial and industrial consumers actually who are there in the congested area of the network, wherein that can help us in decongesting the network as well. Now coming to the electric vehicle, what are the policy incentives or the regulatory incentives or the push that will require? I must congratulate California. I mean, the way they have done. They have mandates from regulators, CPUC. They have mandates from the state, you talk about storage targets, you talk about energy efficiency targets, you talk about the GHG reduction targets, you talk about RPS, renewable purchase standards. All four are working together in tandem, and which is the end objective is to achieve net zero or zero carbon. So that kind of ecosystem of policy and regulation is desirable, which will completely drive from the initial ways that once it is driven, when it is in autopilot or motion mode, then the markets take over. Similarly over here, I mean, there have been a very strong push by the MNRE here in our country about the RPOs. And that is how we have been motivated to jump on that 1200 megawatt and beyond also. Now comes about the push of the on the storage front. Storage MNRE and in fact CRC has come out with a draft regulation of renewable energy sources, wherein storage plus RE, I mean storage as a RE so the generation source, they have benchmarked certain tariff. They have given a tariff model, which can be a good booster for benchmarking when you do an auction. But similarly, when you talk about the storage being used as a transmission asset or a distribution asset in the distribution grid, some benchmark cost or some kind of tariff model can be given, which will be helpful in guiding the SERCs. When we approach the regulatory commissions with such proposal under, say, OPEX mode, they can use this to come out with an annual fixed cost or the tariff for that, which can be paid by the utilities. So this is a third-party owned utility scale storage. That will be very important. Second is, as Mr. Prashad was talking about, resource adequacy plan on an operational way. So it can be done twice a year and mandated by the regulatory commissions. That is a very welcome step. And there, whether these storage assets can be mandated to be first ruled out or the first thing to be considered for as a network non-wired asset, while you bring any proposal for upgrade, network upgrade. Third, these are the nation stages wherein there is a problem of grid parity of the battery energy storage. So instead of going into that loop, what is the rupees per unit of a battery energy storage, that will never serve the purpose. Because battery is not a generation source, as we all know, it is a service, the way you can use it. So you talk about battery energy storage as a service, as per the SLAs, there has to be a standard SLA, which can be, I'm sure that is being designed, which is very, very important. That will give a push to such kind of auctions and RFPs in the place. And finally, one of the policy push initially, just like we saw the ascent of solar in this country. Initially, when the solar was not having grid parity, there was so much VGF support, solar park support, etc. from the government. In this case also, I mean, I'm sure the NITI Aayog is working on similar kind of incentives, what can be given to these kind of projects which are coming up, especially in the initial years when there is a, say, suppose through the auction there is a cost discovered, but the regulator is not willing to accept the entire cost to be passed in the rate base. So what are the options for funding the balance portion? How can the government see in the interest of the public at large and for the sector to give it a push, initial push? How can that be funded so that there is no undue burden on the consumers as well, and the project also gets a push? Over to you, Shubhranshu.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. I noticed that we've come to the top of the hour, and in fact exceeded that. So so sorry to all the all the participants not to be able to take on questions. I have a plethora of questions which have come through, but you've completely run out of time. So we'll come to an end here. There is just one request. We will have a set of questions for review, a poll question. If you could answer those while I call upon Tushar to offer a vote of thanks. So Tushar, if you could please come forth and offer your closing remarks and vote of thanks, please.
Yeah. So, Shubhranshu, good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your participation in today's event. We have run out of time, unfortunately. On behalf of GTG-RISE project, first of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Joint Secretary, for gracing this occasion. He had to leave early today, but he has been a constant source of support for the whole program and has been quite involved in most of the documents which we have developed and released today. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Amal Sinha and BRPL team. They have again been invaluable partners for us and has provided unstinted support throughout this journey. Abhishek and BRPL team who have worked alongside us in successfully completing these reports. So we had release of two papers and report today. Both of them are quite relevant to the distribution utilities in preparing for their future plans. Of course, NREL study has focused on evolving an analytical framework which will help us in understanding the impact of distribution energy sources on the distribution network. And as Mr. Prasad pointed out, the EV white paper has got relevance for all the distribution utilities in India for addressing the increased need for the penetration of EV in future. So I'm sure these will be used by all those who are there today in this event as well as outside in this. So Adarsh and Anish, excellent presentations and summarizing the documents for us. Great show. Finally, I would like to thank Subhranshu, Vibhu who joined from US, and Abhishek for sharing their thoughts during the panel discussion. With this, we can close. Of course, the end, I would like to thank USAID team who have been constant support and guidance to the whole GTG-RISE team. Michael, on behalf of GTG-RISE, I wish you all the very best for your future endeavors. We'll definitely miss you. You have been a constant support all through this journey, and we do look forward to again meeting you sometime soon. With this, we can close today's event. Thank you all once again, and have a nice day, and keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you.